All right, we're here to talk about 2021's The Suicide Squad. Now, I'm recording this Friday morning. I'm not actually able to go see this movie in the theaters until Friday night, but I wanted to make sure that this video got done in time for Saturday morning. So I did my first watch on HBO Max, which means I was able to take notes, but I do plan on seeing this movie in theaters. But let's get into my notes. Well, before I get into my notes, because there's some spoilers in there. So this movie has kind of the same juggling act as Zack Snyder's Justice League, where if you watch the first Justice League, most people thought it was pretty bad, myself included. So then when I watched Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's like, this is clearly better than what we got before, but is it good on its own, right? And like, that's the separate debate, that's the separate decision that you have to come to. Do I like this just because it's better, or do I like this because it's genuinely good? So similarly here, The Suicide Squad, I think, is much better than Suicide Squad. So the question that I was trying to figure out was, is it good on its own, or is it just good as it compares to Suicide Squad? My opinion, I literally just finished watching it. I think it's mostly pretty solid. There's a few things that I find kind of weird or interesting, but as a fan of superheroes and that world, I enjoyed it for what it was. I think it stands on its own. I don't think this is going to have the appeal of a lot of other comic book movies. You know, we've kind of gone from this position where comic book movies in general used to be pretty niche, right? And people like me, when I was growing up, we were the weird kids, we were the nerds, we were the geeks that liked superheroes, blah, blah, blah. And now a lot of that has become very, very mainstream. But then movies like this that focus on characters that people have never heard of, you know, we're getting into now the niche of the niche, because the niche has become too big, so now we've got these other niches. So I do think this movie is pretty good. I enjoyed it. I'm still going to go see it in theaters. But I don't think it's going to do particularly well, especially since it is being released day and date on HBO Max. And especially if you haven't seen my video on how Idris Elba keeps killing franchises, I think that trend is going to hold through on this movie. Not that I take any of the stuff in that video too seriously. It's more of a elaborate, wow, isn't this interesting? But I think it's going to maintain here. So that's kind of all I want to say for my spoiler-free. I liked it, but I'm a fan of this kind of stuff. I definitely think it's better than what we got in 2016. It doesn't really connect to Birds of Prey at all, other than having Harley. At least not that I caught. I didn't catch any references or nods or anything like that. There might be stuff that I missed. But if you're wondering if you need to rewatch that movie also, like I did, I don't think you need to, unless you just want more Harley development. But other than that, there's not much else to Birds of Prey. So I will leave it there for my non-spoiler thoughts. I'm going to get into my notes, which include spoilers throughout. So that's your warning. Let's get into it. So the first thing that happens in this movie is that we hear Johnny Cash. And I had the thought, I was like, that's like the thing that the most people had the most problems with was not the most problem, but everyone gave the old movie crap for the music choices and how much there was and everything like that. And I was just like, we're really going to start this movie off with another song? But, you know, it's James Gunn, who used music in the Guardians of the Galaxy films in a very different way than Suicide Squad used them. And it's a Johnny Cash song, so it's not like all the songs in Suicide Squad were things that, you know, if you asked any random 14-year-old what a cool song was, they might say. I don't think many 14-year-olds think Johnny Cash is cool. And then it's Folsom Prison Blues, and we pretty quickly open up into a prison. So I think Suicide Squad, if there was any effort at all in choosing the songs, it was based on the title of the song, but not the content of the song, not the emotion of the song, not the theme, not the feeling, not what the song makes you feel, so it doesn't match the movie. I think the Suicide Squad throughout this movie, because there are a lot of song choices, but I think it fits the tone of the movie, so it doesn't seem like an afterthought, it doesn't seem like something that somebody just threw in, and none of the songs are as popular as the ones in Suicide Squad, so it seems like there was more thought put into them. I think it would have been very easy to just say, we're not going to put any songs in this, because people hated that in the last one, so we're going to make sure that we don't screw that up. And I think James Gunn has realized that that probably would have not been the best choice, and just been like, we don't have to avoid it, we just have to do it well. And I do think it's done much better in this movie. And it's not all front-loaded like it is in Suicide Squad. I did wonder if that's supposed to be a Joker reference, though, because that first song, Folsom Prison Blues, is a highlight of the film Walk the Line, which is a Johnny Cash biopic-esque type movie, but it stars Joaquin Phoenix, who played the Joker. So it's like, is this a Joker reference? I don't think it was, but that's what happens when, actors are in multiple movies. There are weird things like that. So beginning of the film, we get Waller kind of speeding through the concept of what Task Force X is. Because this isn't really a sequel, it picks up after it, but it's unclear if the actual events in that first film actually happened or not. It kind of seems like it did, but it doesn't matter. So, for people that are new to this movie and haven't seen the old ones, which I don't think there's going to be that many. Like I said, I don't think this film is going to reach as many people. Maybe the fact that it's on HBO Max might get some new viewers. That just won't translate to box office dollars. But just in case, we get a pretty quick rehash of what Task Force X is, how it works, and everything like that, which I think is good. But then I wrote down at one point, because we're following Michael Rooker, and I just wrote, who is this guy? And they call him Savant. I don't know if he has a code name. I didn't pick up on it. In the credits, he's just listed as Savant. I think maybe they say another name at one point. And I tried writing down the names of all the characters because, and I mentioned this in my video on Suicide Squad, the first movie spends way too much time introducing the characters, sometimes 2 or 3 times. And I said, either do it all quick at once, or just don't introduce them, and we'll figure it out on the way. And so we get kind of all of them at once. And so I don't hold that against the movie, but a lot of these are characters that I'm not familiar with, so I wanted to write them down. So I didn't catch a code name of his if he had one. But then we are quickly introduced to Captain Boomerang, who we've seen before, Blackguard, Mongal, Javelin, TDK, Weasel, and then Harley Quinn. And I wrote down another note here. The squad isn't new. It's an ongoing thing with different people on each mission. So that was another weird thing about Suicide Squad, was that the idea had been talked about before, but they didn't actually set it up until they were going on their first mission, and so it felt very strange that it hadn't been set up before, since it had been approved before. So in this one, it's very much like, this is just a thing, this is what happens, we've got a bunch of people to draw from, and based on what we need in the mission, we can pick and choose based on their individual skills. I still don't think the skills that the characters have actually make sense in the story, especially, like, from when you're planning the mission, what you would expect to happen, why you would pick those characters. So I still don't buy that 100%, but they at least say that, so that concept is there. But, like, what's Weasel there for? What's he gonna do, right? So, like, it kind of halfway gets there, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. So, it's just, we've got a lot of people to pick from. We'll pick and choose who we need for what. So, we see these other, I called them crew, other employees that work for and with Waller taking bets on who's going to survive, which made me laugh because there's been a lot of people in the online community that have been like, who's going to die in Suicide Squad? Who's going to survive Suicide Squad? And it's like, those people do that too. I like that we get a mission starting early, because in Suicide Squad, I'm trying to keep the title straight. I apologize if it's confusing. 2016 Suicide Squad. It takes forever to get to the mission. And here we're there. We're on the mission in a couple minutes. I really like that. And then we get the first big twist, which is all these people that I frantically wrote down their names and were supposedly specifically chosen for their special skills. They all die. They're all just wiped out right away. And, you know, there's so many characters in this. And I had seen some of the trailers, but I didn't, like, pour over the trailers. So when they all died, I was just like, who else is in this movie? Right? And then they start reintroducing the second team. And I'm like, okay, I did know that King Shark was in this. I did know that John Cena was in this. I did know that Ratcatcher was in this. But I was just like, in that moment, I was just like, who else is there? Because as soon as she said, like, how's Team 2 doing or something like that, I was like, who else is there? But I think it's really interesting that most of the higher name actors are in that first wave of people that die almost right away. Nathan Fillion, Michael Rooker, and who's the third guy I'm thinking of? Jai Courtney, who plays Captain Boomerang, which especially Captain Boomerang, like, he was one of the few things people liked from Suicide Squad. So when they brought him back, everyone was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, we want to see more of him. We want to do... I even started a boomerang count, because I was going to count how many boomerangs he throws, because I know that was a big thing in the first movie, where people were like, it's Captain Boomerang, he only throws like 4 boomerangs in the whole movie. And I was like, let's see if he can get more than 4. He throws 1, and then he dies. And it's one of those things, like, I'm not a fan of any of these characters specifically, so I get the humor of it, but man, if you're a Captain Boomerang fan, and you had to suffer through Suicide Squad, and then you watched the extended cut because you thought maybe there was more Boomerang, and they've let you down, and then they're bringing him back, and you're like, oh my gosh, this looks like a better movie. They're bringing him back because they know that he can be used better. James Gunn is doing it. He knows how to use weird characters. I can imagine Captain Boomerang fans getting so hyped for this movie and getting so let down. And that's not where I'm at, but I feel so bad for those guys because they just waste him right away. So then it's like, well, screw me for trying to keep track of all these characters because they're dead now. So then we get the 3 days earlier, and I started writing down all the names of the new team, and I'm like, hopefully this... I will say, I was waiting the whole movie for a Team 3 to show up with characters that we hadn't seen in the trailers. I was like, this is going to be a big twist at the end, a big surprise. Never happens. But I was ready for it, because I was like, if you do it once, you're going to do it twice, and they don't. We do get other twists later on, just not the one I was expecting. Okay, so we hear that we are told that Bloodsport is in prison for putting Superman in the ICU with a kryptonite bullet. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, does this take place in the DCEU? Does the DCEU still exist? Is that something that actually happened? Is it just a story that people are being told? And this is the thing, and people have talked about this with Deadshot also, because the premise for Suicide Squad was we need someone who could stop Superman. And none of those characters could stop Superman, except for maybe El Diablo, because he's magical. But people were always like, oh, well, Deadshot could stop him if he had a kryptonite bullet. But it's like, anyone could stop him if they had a kryptonite bullet. So, Bloodsport's big claim to fame at the beginning of this movie is he put Superman in the ICU with a kryptonite bullet. Literally anyone that had a kryptonite bullet could have done that. So, I don't know. It's weird that they put that in here when it doesn't do anything for the character, because any character could do that. And it just raises questions and implications about this universe. So I knew that was in the trailer. I was hoping that that was something that was in the trailer that was not in the actual movie. That was not the case. That line doesn't make sense to me. I wish it wasn't in there. Okay, what do we have? Oh my gosh. So then I wrote 25 minutes. Oh, no, I'm sorry. My next note is, well, he's not Deadshot. So I remember when Idris Elba was first announced for this movie, everyone was like, are they recasting Will Smith? Is he playing Deadshot? And it was like, no, he's playing someone else, but it's basically like Deadshot, so if they want to bring Will Smith back in at some point, they can. And so there was all this back and forth about, is he Deadshot, is he not Deadshot? And it's like, this movie really wants you to know that he's not Deadshot, because this guy does not like his daughter at all, doesn't care for his daughter hardly at all, and that was Deadshot's whole thing. So it's like, well, I guess that's how they're different, is that they're the same character, except for one likes his daughter and one doesn't like his daughter. So then I wrote 25 minutes in, we're back at the start. And this is one of those things where on first watch, I get why we see the events this way, because then we get the shock of like, wow, that whole team's dead. What? Oh, there's a second team. And then we go back and we meet the second team. But after we know that, I'm curious on a second watch if it's just going to feel tedious going back in time and redoing this whole thing over again. And then we kind of get that later, where it jumps back 8 minutes right before Peacemaker is about to kill Ratcatcher. But it's not really done as a twist. I think it's done to like follow this group, and now they're back together. And I think that's probably better than cutting back and forth between the two groups the whole time. So that one doesn't bother me as much. But when you've got multiple, I don't even want to call them flashbacks, because there are also flashbacks in this movie. There are flashbacks with Ratcatcher 2 and her father. There's the bus ride of let me stop and tell you my backstory with Polka Dot Man. I guess Polka Dot Man does it in the jungle. Bloodsport does it on the bus. Ratcatcher does it in the bus, and then we get other flashbacks later with Ratcatcher. So there's a lot of going back in time. Sometimes we're just told, sometimes we see, and sometimes there are entire sequences that have happened in the past. And it's just, I get each one of them individually, but when it's all together, it's a little, I don't want to say jarring, but it makes it a little hard to follow what's actually happening now when you keep cutting back and forth and back and forth. For me, at least. Maybe that's a me problem. So then we get this scene. I really like this, where they're infiltrating where Rick Flag is being held prisoner, and they're just taking all these guys out, and Bloodsport and Peacemaker are like competing to see who can kill people the best, and King Shark's just eating guys and all this stuff. And then they get there, and they're the quote-unquote good guys, the resistance fighters, and it's just like, they just wiped them all out. So there's a bunch more at the end, so I guess that was a different cell or a different group or something. I don't know. It doesn't... I get that it's done as a joke, and it is a funny joke, but I wish that there were consequences for that, because, like, she doesn't even... Like, she has a moment where she's sad, but, like, she doesn't... what's the word I'm looking for? Not punish, but like, she doesn't get on them about it. She doesn't like show hesitation to trusting these people afterwards. She's just, all right, well, that's where we are now. Let's move on. And it's just kind of weird that something that big happens and it's never referenced again. Isn't a thing. It's just a joke, and like, it's a funny joke, but it could have been more. And I wish it would have been more. So then my next thing. Again, I was on board for a lot of the jokes on this. So I wrote down. So we get the whole thing with Harley and the president. And we get this whole big montage, and there are all these scenes with him and the general, and then him with Harley, and oh, I want to marry you, and blah, 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 blah. And there's this one part where he's standing by the window talking about his plan and what he's going to do to stay in power. And I wrote the sentence, too much time with the leader of Corto Maltese. And then as soon as I finished writing that, she shoots him and he dies. And then I just wrote, good payoff. So, like, I was concerned. Like, why are we spending so much time with this guy? Where are the rest of the characters that I want to see? You know, this is supposed to be about the Suicide Squad. And then she shoots him out of nowhere. And I'm just like, okay, all right, you got me, James. You got me. Well done. Oh, my goodness. Again, it feels like the death of the president could have been a bigger deal, but all that happens is, well, he's dead, so you're the president now. Well, he's dead, so you're the president now. Well, you're dead, so the people get control now. It doesn't really ever... There's not really any consequences throughout the movie. You can have funny jokes and still have them have consequences. Oh, man. But I don't know. Okay, then we get... oh, my gosh. Okay, this was another thing that I saw in a trailer, but I didn't put everything together. The scene where they go to save Harley, and then she comes out and she's like, what you guys doing? That part I had seen, and then when they're like, we're going to save you, and she's like, do you want me to go back inside? Because he's like, it was a good plan, too. And she's like, I can go back inside so you can still do it. I love that. I liked Harley a lot in this movie. I don't know if I'm just getting more used to Margot Robbie's version of it, or if Margot Robbie is more settling in on what exactly this is. Because I feel like early on, it was like, this isn't the cartoon Harley. And it was more about what she wasn't than what she was. And then it was like, how does she fit into Birds? And so I feel like she's just kind of becoming more her own character and less having to deal with living up to people's expectations of this other character or other version of the character. So I liked a lot of what Harley did in this movie. There was another... Oh, my next note was when Bloodsport and Flag are intimidating the Thinker, and they're like, if you do this, you die. If you do this, you die. And she's like, if you mismatch blacks, you die. If you cough without covering your mouth, you die. Whatever. And they're like, no, Harley, no. And then they're like continuing to badger him about all this stuff, and she's just pacing back and forth behind him, and she literally says, I am walking back and forth. And she's funny. She's a funny character. I get that, like, okay, haha, cuckoo, she doesn't make sense, whatever. But I don't know. I think it works a lot more in this movie. I think some of it worked in the old movies, but I think it works the best in this movie. This is probably my favorite Harley performance. Although I don't know. I liked her in Birds of Prey a lot. It was just weird because it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the movie. But I don't know. I liked her in this a lot. Okay, then I wrote scene titles. So we get a lot of, instead of, words coming up on screen, they're integrated into the scene with different things, which I'm sure has been done before. I feel like I've seen stuff like that before. But it's not something you see a lot, and I liked it. It was a nice visual choice that I liked. Wanted... Oh, okay, so at one point I wrote down I wanted more of a variety of polka dots. So, I don't know much about Polka Dot Man, but I've heard Nando from Nando V Movies talk about Polka Dot Man. And he's talked about how different polka dots do different things, right? And he can do all sorts of it. So, like, I'm imagining if you're James Gunn and you're making this weird movie and you're picking all these weird characters, and one of them that survives into the movie a good deal is Polka Dot Man, I'm like, you're going to do some weird stuff with the polka dots, right? And he doesn't. He just shoots them at things, and they burn them, explode, dissolve. I'm not even totally sure what the reaction is. They set off the explosion at one point, but I think it's more like a dissolving acid type effect, whatever. I'm like, I'm fine with that as one thing that they can do, but I'm like, do weird things with them, right? Like, mix it up a little bit, and we don't ever really get that. And I'm like, again, if you're a fan of Polka Dot Man, and I don't think there's a lot, but if you are, like, this is your one chance. This is probably the only time you're going to get Polka Dot Man in a big screen movie. a big budget movie. So it's like, just give the Polka Dot Man fans a little bit more to go on, you know? Get weird with it. It's fine. We won't care. You've got a weasel played by your own brother in this movie. Like, it's fine to be weird. I wish we would have gotten more different things with polka dots. At one point I just wrote down quote-unquote piranhas. I don't know what those little things are that were very, very adorable and then turned very, very deadly. But I liked them. They didn't really serve a purpose. I thought that they might kill King Shark, and that would be their purpose of the story, but they don't. They just kind of go away after that. But they were very cute, and then they were very dangerous. And, you know, I would probably buy a toy of them if they come out. I don't know if they will or not. Oh, man. So then we get the scene where Bloodsport kills Peacemaker, or doesn't kill him, I guess, because he's still alive at the post-credit scene, but he takes down Peacemaker. And as the bullets are flying into each other, I thought back to the line that Peacemaker said about, because that was another thing when they were introducing Bloodsport, and I was like, you know, he's basically Deadshot. He's the same character. Okay, he's slightly different because he's got this daughter. And then she introduces Peacemaker, and she says literally the same lines as she said to Bloodsport, and I thought that was just going to kind of like hang there for the audience to catch on, but Bloodsport points it out, and he's like, we do exactly the same thing. And Peacemaker's like, but I do it better. And he's like, what do you mean? I hit my I hit my target center mass. And he's like, I hit them more center. How do you do more center? Smaller bullets, blah, blah, blah. He's like, my bullets will go through your bullet holes without even touching the sides. So my brain goes back to that conversation as these two bullets are flying through the air. And so I'm thinking that Peacemaker is going to kill Bloodsport, right? Because he's better. But he doesn't. Bloodsport takes down Peacemaker. And Peacemaker's like, how? And Bloodsport says, smaller bullets. Like, the closest thing I can think of is like in Iron Man 2 when Tony goes to Ivan Vanko and he's like, you know, this is a good idea. Your cycles per second were a little low. You could have done this, that, and the blah, blah, blah. He's like, your thing was inefficient. And then, over time, Ivan Vanko improves it so that when he attacks later, it's more efficient and more effective. But that happened later in time. At what point was Bloodsport able to redo his whole arsenal so that he learned what kind of bullets Peacemaker uses, and then redid his own arsenal to compensate for that? So that was really weird to me, because it's not what the movie sets up. What the movie sets up is that Peacemaker is better than Bloodsport, and so in that moment I'm expecting Bloodsport to die. I guess maybe because he's got all sorts of different weapons, so I guess different guns that he has have different types of projectiles, and so he just picked one of the smallest ones that he had. Knowing that concept, I don't know. That was weird. It's a callback, but it's not a payoff to what we heard before. And then my next note is just suck it, Waller, because Amanda Waller is the worst. And that scene from Suicide Squad where she just shoots everyone in the room, it's just like, wow, she really is the absolute worst. So when we get to the point in this movie where she's like, your mission's done, these people aren't our problem. I expected Ratcatcher 2 to be like, our mission is complete, right? We did what you wanted us to do. Can we still try to help? And if we fail, it doesn't hurt you at all, but like, we want to try to do something good, even though it's not part of our mission. There's no reason for Waller to want them to not do that, to want them to not help, except for possibly that she doesn't want them to die because she considers them assets. But again, like, she didn't know how that mission was going to go. So, like, you don't know that being able to control rats is going to be the thing that lets you beat this giant starfish, right? So, like, Bloodsport I can understand because she's, you know, he's very skilled and she sees the potential in him. But, like, I don't think she sees a whole lot of value in Ratcatcher 2 and Polka Dot Man. And King Shark is really, really strong, but like you gotta have other guys that are strong, right? King Shark's really dumb. He doesn't follow orders well, so like I feel like she would consider those acceptable losses. So I feel like if they pled their case and they were like, we understand you're not asking us to do this, but their mission is done. They don't need to bring anything back, right? Bloodsport's got the drive, but she doesn't know that, and she doesn't want him to bring it back. So there's nothing that they need to bring back. They did the thing that they were sent there to do, so there shouldn't really be a reason that she doesn't want them to help out. Other than that, she's the worst. So then we get this buildup where, like, all these innocent civilians are going to die, and so one of the people that works for Waller whacks her in the head. I thought she was dead. They whacked her in the head, and I was waiting for someone else in that room to come up and shoot her in the head like she had done in the first movie. That didn't happen, and she's totally fine by the end of the movie, which is kind of disappointing. But in that moment, I was glad, and I wrote, suck it, Waller. Because finally, someone else took control of the situation, even though they didn't keep it very long. Then I wrote down that we got our Avengers/Captain America moment. So that scene from the Avengers where they're all circled around, and Captain America's telling everybody what to do and where to go. Bloodsport gets that in this movie. It's not quite the same. Doesn't feel quite as good in here, but, you know, he's finally become that leader that she said that he could be. He didn't think so, but he's like, Harley, take the high ground. Don't know why, right? It makes sense for Hawkeye to take the high ground because he's got a bow. Harley Quinn has a javelin, like not even a gun, a javelin. So I don't know why he told her to take the high ground, but okay. And then, you know, he's like, Shark, eat. Very much, you know, or, you know, Awale, was that his name? I don't know. Every time they said his name, I just thought of Adewale from Assassin's Creed. So whatever his name was, King Shark, Nom Nom. That was very similar to Hulk Smash. And then it turns to Polka Dot Man, and he's like, you know who that is? That's your mom. Because we get these weird, not even flashbacks, it's just like cuts where Polka Dot Man sees everyone as his mom, and that makes killing them easier. But he sees his friends as his mom too, so does he want to kill his friends? I don't know, it's very strange, but then we get this weird scene of giant Polka Dot Man's mom smashing everything, and he shoots a bunch of polka dots, and it doesn't really do anything, and then he dies. Sorry, Polka Dot Man fans. So that kind of cut that scene short a little bit, but for a second there, we had a bit of an Avengers moment. Okay, so then these people have gone off mission. They risked getting themselves blown up in the head to save the citizens of Corto Maltese. But when Bloodsport is cornered by the citizens of Corto Maltese under the influence of Starro, he just starts murdering them. He doesn't try to escape. He doesn't try to disable them. He doesn't try to climb up the building that he's behind. He just starts murdering people. And I'm like, aren't these the people you wanted to save? Wasn't that your whole thing? Wasn't there innocent people? So that came out of nowhere. That was really weird. Oh, I skipped over a note. At one point I just wrote Jotunheim because I guess we gotta reference a Marvel movie. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's from the comics. I don't read a whole lot of DC comics, especially Suicide Squad comics. But, like, you couldn't have called this facility something else? You had to call it something from a Marvel movie? Really? Okay, whatever. You do you. And then I also just wrote the fake mustache where King Shark is trying to be in disguise. I rewound it. I could not understand what Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2 say during that scene that makes King Shark so upset. So I missed a joke there. And I find it weird that it seems like Bloodsport makes fun of him and he gets upset, and then Ratcatcher is laughing at the fact that he's upset. But I'm like, I thought Ratcatcher was supposed to be the nice one. She should be comforting him, not being like, ha, Bloodsport, your bullying is so funny. So I don't know what I missed there, but it felt really weird. But I really liked that he thought this was a fake mustache and that was going to work. That was very, very good, very good. At one point I wrote for Bloodsport, just get over yourself. Because, and I know so many people like this, where they see everyone else as absolutely the worst, right? And every time someone like says something, he's like, "Oh my gosh, oh my goodness, I can't believe it," blah blah blah, and it's just like, get over yourself. Have enough insight to realize that you are exactly like all of these people. Get over yourself and move on with your life. So I didn't like him. I didn't buy into his character. I didn't care when he finally, when he had the turn to save the people, I was like, this doesn't make any sense with what we've seen from his character so far. And then when he started murdering them, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense with his decision, but I buy it for his character because he doesn't care about people. When he got his little Avengers moment, I was like, okay, this was set up with what Waller said, but I don't care as much because he's not Captain America. He's a terrible guy that I don't like. And then when he and Peacemaker were shooting at each other, I wasn't rooting for Peacemaker, but I was ready to see him die. And I was like, yeah, serves you right, because you don't care about anyone. So he was an odd duck for me. I'm not happy that he kind of was the hero at the end. And I don't know. He gets a nice little thing where his daughter sees him on TV and she's like, "That's my dad. He's actually a good guy." I'm like, he's not a good guy. He's the worst. And he's so full of himself that he can't see that. He never admits fault. He never has a moment of realization. He's never like, okay, I gotta get over myself and blah, 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 blah. He kind of accepts his teammates for who they are at the end there. But like, only because he can't do nothing. He knows that he needs them. So, I don't know. Okay, so then we get this scene where a giant starfish is using a bunch of little starfish to basically create a hive mind of mindless drones to do its bidding. And how is that creature stopped? By Ratcatcher using a hive mind of pretty much mindless drones to do her bidding. And I'm like, is this supposed to be clever? Ratcatcher's power, what she does, is what Starro does. She takes over the minds of innocent rats. I know they're not humans, but she takes over the minds of rats and makes them do what she wants them to do. That's what Starro does. And I know Marvel movies get flack for the villain is the same as the hero, same powers, but with a different costume. But it's like, I don't think they realized this. Because if they did, somebody would have said something about it in the movie. And I'm just like, and I know she's a villain, she's not the hero, but like, she's the hero of the movie in that moment. And it was just really weird to me. And I'm like, oh, this thing that's taking over the minds of all these innocent people is bad. So I'm going to stop him by taking over the minds of thousands of animals. I don't know. That was a weird way to end it for me. I don't know how else, I don't know how you beat that thing. King Shark's chomping on it, and that doesn't seem to be doing anything. I guess, like, that's where I expected Team 3 to come in. Right? And Team 3 has got some other kind of firepower, some portals, or, I know there's another character that I feel like I confused with Polka Dot Man. I want to say it's called the Spot or something. I think he's a Spider-Man villain. But, like, he throws, like, portals. So I'm like, instead of killing Polka Dot Man for a joke, have him do something other than shoot things that kind of burn like acid. Have him shoot a big polka dot. That's a portal. Literally, his powers come, he said it's an interdimensional virus. So send Starro to a different dimension. By the way, if I call Starro Staryu at any point in this video, I'm sorry. That's what I think of when I see a starfish. Staryu and Patrick. And I'm wearing pink. That was not intentional. But yeah, it's so weird how they defeat him. I think Polka Dot Man would have been a better choice, or a third team, because was Waller's plan for the first team to fail? She says that they're like a distraction, but did she intend on them all dying? Because if not, then Team 2 is the backup, right? And if you're going to have a backup team, You're going to have a backup team for your backup team. So get people with explosives. Get people with shrinking powers, and they can shrink Starro down. Get people with portals, like I said. Get people with freezing powers. Just slow it down. There are other ways to do this where the it's not so weird that the hero is doing the exact same thing as the villain. Anyway, I've ranted about that long enough. Speaking of Patrick, my next thing was I wrote, "We did it, Patrick! We saved the city!" Bloodsport has some line where he's like, "I know Flag wanted to release this drive to the press, but," or maybe it's a different part, but he's like, Harley seems unhappy with him, and he's like, "I know you wanted to do this, but we saved the city, right? This wasn't for nothing. We saved the city." And it's just like, that city's in rough shape, dude. Like, saying that you saved it, you're giving yourself a lot of credit there. Like, yeah, not everyone is decimated, but like, way to pat yourself on the back real early for that one. So my mind immediately flashed to that SpongeBob meme of, "We did it! We saved the city!" And then my last note that I wrote was Pet the Raccoon, because it's a James Gunn movie, so we have to have a weirdly masculine character finally embrace his emotions and pet a CGI furry companion. So just like Dave Bautista, Drax the Destroyer petting Raccoon on the head in Guardians of the Galaxy, we finally get Bloodsport petting, is it Sebastian? Is that his name? Petting the rat as he sits on his leg. So, this movie, I liked a lot of it. I still think it could have been way better with just a few different alterations there. I'm not Nando V Movies. I don't make my one small change videos, but come on. Give Polka Dot Man a little bit more to do. If you're gonna kill Boomerang in the first 5 minutes, let him throw more boomerangs at least. Like, that would be, on its own, another funny joke. If he dies in the first scene, but he still threw more boomerangs than in the whole of Suicide Squad. Like, I don't know. I don't make movies. That's not my job. I like this. I thought it was fun. I am going to go see it in theaters. I'm going to be curious how I'm going to react to it a second time. But I think it's better than Suicide Squad. I think it's funny. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's particularly good. It's not something that I'm going to feel compelled to recommend to people that are not mega comic fans. Mainstream audiences, if they're like, "Oh, should I go see that?" I'm probably going to be like, "You're probably going to be really confused because it's really weird." And then they're not going to want to go see it. If it had done certain things differently, I feel like this could have been really, really great. Like Guardians of the Galaxy. But it's just not quite there for me. That's all I got to say. I don't want to ramble on too much longer. I've been talking a long time. So those are my thoughts on The Suicide Squad. Let me know if you have any thoughts, but that's all that I have to say at this point. I might do a second video after I watch it a second time. Thank you for watching this video, though, and have a good day.